So just recently, Mike Todd asked Carl Lentz to come on staff at his church to be his chief strategist. Now, if you're aware of who Carl Lentz is, then you will be no stranger to the fact that Carl Lentz's strategy looks more like trying to figure out where he can place his privates more so than how to effectively and carefully exegete scripture. Sure, Carl Lentz was able to gather celebrities like Justin Bieber and Kim Kardashian and Kanye and others to not much effect, let's just say, as you can see in clips like this.
Or backstage, get here live if you can. If not, we love you. God is able to do more than you can imagine.
Yeah.
Over to you.
What would Jesus do?
Oh, look at that.
And I'm not sure that we can expect anything different at Mike Todd's church now that Carl Lentz has spent a whole 2 years out of ministry and is now ready to get back in the game because he's fully repented. So just a couple of problems with this. How do we know that Carl Lentz is actually ready to go back into ministry? There's no objective measure by which we can tell if he actually learned his lesson, if he's repented of past sin, or if he really wants to do better for himself and for his family. Of course, we have the fact that he's still married, but let's just say that color me skeptical that might have more to do with status than it actually does with the gospel. And that's the point at the end of the day, is that the cult of narcissism, when it's in church, is a really dangerous thing. When you're preaching messages to actually appease the people who are listening so that more money and more celebrities come, you're actually doing what is antithetical to preaching the gospel. Of course, I'm not suggesting that preaching the gospel is just something that tries to rub people the wrong way or turn them away. But what I am suggesting is this, is that the pastor needs to be able to preach the truth regardless of whether the people in the pews like it. And frankly, that's what's caused a lot of Christians in the present to flee from church. Now, I know the secularist out there who watches shows like this and waits for me to comment on the fact that people are not attending church like they used to. They do so because they want to put a flag in the ground of secularism and say we've won and our worldview is better than yours. But of course, that's not the truth, because that doesn't take into account the group of people who are daily alienated when they come to churches and they hear pastors wishy-washy and they hear pastors giving in and not actually standing for truth and not actually being a pioneer for what it looks like to stand up for truth in a culture that is antithetical to it. And that's the final point, which is that we need pastors, especially in big platforms, who are not strategizing how to make good with celebrities. That's kind of like irrelevant. What we need is pastors like Mike Todd and like Carl Lentz showing us what authentic Christianity has looked like historically, which is a group of people who are willing to sacrifice their ego and sacrifice their reputation and even sacrifice their strategy if it ever flies in the face of biblical truth. But more and more, we don't see that. More and more, we have pastors who are willing to sacrifice the truth for the sake of building their platform, because their ideas are that if my platform gets bigger, then I can reach more people. Well, the problem is if you're sacrificing the truth in the process of building your platform, then you're actually not winning more people to the truth. You're actually just winning them to yourself. Now, we've seen it's an incredibly effective strategy to focus on the niceties of Christianity and try to avoid the more sticky portions of Scripture that may not be as socially acceptable. This is the pop culture church of today. This is the strategy that people like Carl Lentz have implemented in his church and in other churches. And it's what we need less of, because we're watching in real time the cult of narcissism explode in our face. Why would we as Christians continue to do what we see the world doing to much ill effect? If anything, Easter week should tell us that the most important thing we can do is take up our cross and deny ourselves. And I hope you do that by not attending churches like Transformation Church, who have strategies like the seeker-sensitive one I just illustrated, but actually go to churches that are willing to preach uncompromising and difficult truths. By the way, it's not easy to do. One of the easiest things you can do as a pastor is just tell people what they want to hear. But that also makes you weak. And we need strong pastors in the present. Pastors like Rob McCoy. Pastors like my pastor. And by the way, Rob McCoy just met with Sean Foyt in Nashville to do one of the very few things that actually provided some sympathy and some healing to the people of Nashville who are wrecked by what just took place in their community. While we hear from places like VW, as I mentioned before, and other corporations around America, how we need to celebrate Transgender Day of Visibility, very few corporations have taken the time to actually mourn what took place in Nashville. But we have courageous and godly men who are willing to do that, which is why I am happy to endorse what Rob McCoy did and Sean Foyt did at the concert that they just did and that day of prayer that they just did Saturday in Nashville. We need more of that and less of the Christian seeker-sensitive strategist, the strategist out there who are going to do nothing more than build a platform to glorify self. So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.